Was that you?
No, I thought that was you.
But if it wasn't you, and it wasn't me, then who? NOSFERATU. Good evening, campers, dreamers, and babysitters. And yes, we have finally reached it, Luke. What I think, now don't quote me on this, guys, but I'm pretty confident that by the time this movie comes out, this will be the last big horror release of 2024. Think I'm right there? I think that's got to be about accurate, right?
Yeah, from the outlook, I don't think they're trying to squeeze anything in or trying to pull a fast one on us. So, yeah, by the looks of it, I think we have a couple smaller releases after Nosferatu, but nothing as anticipated as this one. Because this one, even I think before the start of 2024, people were talking about this one. So, easily the biggest release here at the end of the year.
Oh, yeah. And, I wanted to talk a little bit about that up front here. Because, we're getting to see this so early. And, I just want to kind of build up that anticipation for you guys here a little bit. Because, we've been talking about Nosferatu for a minute. It was definitely on our most anticipated of 2024 that we did with Sledgehammer. We've had a lot of those films pan out really nicely for us. Alien Romulus just absolutely revitalized the franchise for Alien. Late Night with the Devil was great. We love that. In a Violent Nature was a lot of fun. It seems like 2024 has just had a lot of really solid flicks come out.
Absolutely. It's been one after the other. I think I talked about it on one of our reviews where I've been compiling a list of trying to keep track of everything that I've been enjoying in terms of kind of putting them in order. So by the time we get to the end of the year list, then I'm not kind of scrambling and trying to rewatch stuff and remember what my feelings were. And I'll be honest, I've played so much back and forth with what's 1, what's 2, what's in the top 5, what just squeaked out of the top 10. It's just been ever changing just because there have been so many quality films. And yeah, I do have a tentative top 10 list, but I'm always kind of flirting with that 11 through 13 because those are such strong films. There's been so many great horror releases this year.
Yeah, not to mention a couple of dark horses that we've had come into the fray, but man, this was one I know. It was just every month that we got closer to Nosferatu, like the anticipation was building. We spoke with Evan from over at Rockland Graves. Anybody who comes from his channel knows how excited he is for this. We talk about it constantly on Beyond the Splatter Graves. And now we've seen it. And we got home. We had to brave a snowstorm to go and see this movie here in Ohio. So that was not fun. But I wasn't going to miss it. Neither were you. Certainly not. Because we love Robert Eggers. By the time you guys get a chance to see this movie, we should have some Robert Eggers content up on the channel. But let's not bury the lead any further. Luke, I'm going to let you start things off. Give me your first impressions walking out of Nosferatu.
Well, we're about, about 4 hours removed, I think, from watching the film, driving home, and then kind of sitting with it a little bit. And honestly, I enjoyed it coming out of the theater, and the more and more I sit with it, the more I enjoy this film. So I was really positive as the credits were rolling on this, but I can see my love for this film growing more and more, which tends to be kind of the idea with Robert Eggers was, I love The Lighthouse. That's my favorite out of his. It still is.
Same
but it's one of those films where every time I go back, I love it more and more. Just you pick up the nuances of his filmmaking and the performances that he gets out of his actors. So Nosferatu, I can easily see this being something I'm going to go back to, and my love for this is going to grow more and more. But honestly, I'm very positive about this film.
Yeah, I mean, this is just the progression of Robert Eggers, I think, is at full tilt in this one as far as this man's just ability to capture both this epic size and scope in this film, but also still stay true to his kind of more lighthouse, more witch indie roots, where things are still very much, a lot of old titles, a lot of very, very interesting framing devices, and the way he shoots things and how direct and how solid some of these shots are. it's so interesting to see that and then watch him mix with just these much broader sweeping shots. And I mean, the fact that this film, and I don't quote me on this, guys, I didn't double check this, I should have. I think this was made for less money than The Northman, and that's just shocking to me. I mean, The Northman is an epic. It has some very epic sequences. I know as we sit here, I don't think you've watched it yet, Luke, have you?
I have not yet. I haven't had a
Yep.
chance. That's on my watch list over the next few days. As
Yep.
you said, we're going to be covering some Robert Eggers
Robert
content.
Eggers
That's
stuff, yeah.
the one box I have to check for Robert Eggers.
I know. I've been on, guys, don't blame me. I've been on him every year. Like, I talked to him about this movie. It was my favorite of that year. But man, this is the progression here is just off the chain. I mean, this guy understands filmmaking to a degree that I hope I can one day. I know that you would like to one day, just to have the confidence to present something that feels so old yet so modern at the same time. It's just he's got this own style of his that he's completely developed, and the fact that with just how much of a perfectionist he is, that the authenticity of so many of the sets and so many of the costumes and things, you just totally feel transported into the world of Nosferatu.
And looking at the story, this is a very old story. There's been a handful of iterations for this, and I think people can look at this and say, well, what new things can you really bring to a story like this? And looking at Robert Eggers in his repertoire and what he can do in terms of filmmaking, it's not necessarily what new things he can bring. It's kind of put in more of a modern visual spin on it, and then bringing some of the unique storytelling elements that he does. The performances that he gets out of his actors, which we'll talk about, and of course, it's no surprise that he pushes and pushes and pushes and gets some very phenomenal performances out of these actors. But, taking that old iconic story and then bringing it into 2024 and not necessarily doing anything out of the ordinary, but when you look at it, the visuals that are there, the sound design that's here, the performances, like I said, just the tone in general, the tensions that he is able to build in this story and really present it to a modern audience. Now, I don't know necessarily if everyone's going to resonate with this. Robert Eggers' storytelling tends to be a little bit more tedious than what I think if you're just, balls to wall vampire flick fan, you're not going to get that here. This is more of a slow beat kind of. Mm-hmm. We're really building that tension. We're really telling a kind of a odd love story in a sense, and I absolutely love that about this. So this really does feel like such a modern spin on such an old story that, this is our Nosferatu. This is our generation's Nosferatu, where we're going to go back to this one. We're going to rewatch this one, and we're going to pick out great things about this film. So, Robert Eggers really did put his stamp on this one, and it's just one of those things where he put his own creative spin on such an old story.
Yeah, and this is a pure gothic romance through and through. It's one of those things where I feel like people, like you said, who are going in maybe expecting a more traditional vampire story. I mean, I would even say this is a harder gothic romance turn than even Bram Stoker's Dracula from Francis Ford Coppola. And that had a ton of romance in it, but this is very much a very twisted and dark love story. And, I really admire that. And, for me, before I just continue to gush about the cast and things, I'll get out of the way of a couple of my issues I had with the film, just to kind of leave that here, because I am very positive on this. I had a great time, but I do need to be honest with myself that I think one of the issues, and this could just be a personal thing because, I've been anticipating this. So it's like, I've watched a few things. I've brushed up a lot on my Dracula lore and everything. So the story, especially in the first act, it is very familiar. There are a couple of really key sequences. One involving, I think it's Thomas. Yeah, is he spends the night in a village. Very interesting stuff there. Really cool imagery. Really loved all of that. But then as we kind of get into our first act and really cement ourselves there, it is a story you've seen a lot. And I've certainly seen it many a times. I'm sure Luke has too. And it's something that it's, again, a necessary evil. It's a part of the lore. It's a part of the story. You have to get there. But it does, I think, kind of meander there a little bit. and I understand it has to, but for someone who's as familiar with the material as I am, it can feel a little bit like, okay, we gotta let's keep moving a little bit. And that's just me. I felt like it dragged a little bit, but once we got into the second and third act, I mean, this movie just picks up and runs as soon as Count Orlok is properly introduced. It just goes. It's one of those things where I was captivated and pulled all the way through. And the other thing is a spoiler, so I can't really talk about it, and I won't talk about it. All I will say is that there is a decision that is made with a character in this film that I wasn't huge on at first, and it did take some growing to it. You know, I was definitely I was a little put off. I know I talked about it at nauseum with you and Jake at the theater, but I was very put off by that. But by the end of the film, I had accepted it, and it is something that I think will, like Luke said, on more rewatches, this will grow on me as I go. It's just something I wasn't expecting, and it was a little odd.
Yeah, and you know, I'll say pacing wise, I think it was fine. It was something what you expect from a Robert Eggers film. But even when I sat in the theater with The Lighthouse, I was like, I'm feeling the runtime a little bit on here. And I think maybe that is with Nosferatu. When you go to the theater, this isn't a short film. This is over 2 hours. So, with building that tension and that slow pacing, some people may feel that runtime. Now, what I enjoy about Robert Eggers films is that once you own them physically, you can kind of sit down and then watch them at your leisure. And I think that's why they grow on me a little bit more, is that, I can just sit back, watch them. If I have to pause it, go do something, I can come back without really losing any momentum. Where in the theater, I think, especially if you're going in for maybe a lighter vampire flick, something like an Abigail or something, where that kind of moves rather quickly, this one does not. So I could see people feeling that runtime. I did in the theater, in full transparency. We did have a work day. We had to drive. We had to watch the film, and then we had a snowstorm ahead of us to drive
to
back
battle home. And so it was a lot.
So that could have factored into it. Now, I usually do enjoy the pacing of Robert Eggers films, but they are rather slow. So I think that was really my only criticism. The issue you had with character design, for me, I enjoyed. It just kind of maybe sets apart from other things that we've seen. So I rather did enjoy that, especially the full take on everything of the character design. I think it was rather well done. So I think for me, that was really something I found as a positive. I honestly, other than the pacing, I didn't really have too many negatives about this film.
No,
it was really what I expected going into a Robert Eggers film about Nosferatu.
And I do want to put that out there. That's why I wanted to get my negatives out now, because as far as the rest of the film goes, I am very positive on this. It's something that I'm excited to see again. I do plan to go see it again in theaters once it releases here. I know my dad's going to want to go see it, and I do want to take my wife because I think she'll really enjoy it. But I mean, really, I think the one major positive beyond just Eggers, his team, the cinematography, the things that we know are going to be top notch. The thing that I was pretty impressed by, and obviously we'll save the big guy because he has a little bit of a conversation of his own, were some of the cast members really brought something to this film that I didn't expect. Now, I will give everybody their dues as far as Willem Dafoe. Absolutely, we knew he was going to be something. He's always wonderful, and he works wonderfully with Eggers. This is his third time working with him. Loved his character, loved the performance. I mean, Ralph Ineson, just absolutely. I thought when he showed up that it was going to be like a cameo. The fact that he's actually a character in this film was just perfect. Loved him, always love him. He chews up Eggers' dialogue like nobody else. I swear, his voice, everything, ever since I saw The Witch, he is just somebody that I need him in every Eggers movie ever. And it's just something that I'm glad they still have a working relationship together. Now, the one that hurt a little bit, that I was worried about the most, and it's nothing against the actress, but it was Lily Rose Depp, and that's only because Anya Taylor-Joy was originally slated for that role. And I was just like, I wanted to see that. I wanted to see them reunite. I think this is, Eggers' passion project. This is the one he's been working on for, decades. He wants to get this out. And I got to say, Lily Rose Depp impressed the hell out of me. What a fucking performance she gives in this movie, guys. She is seriously committing to so many just on one hand, very awkward, very strange, very, I mean, just, I almost want to say, for a lack of a better term, embarrassing levels of just throwing herself into this character and just really giving you every ounce of just no privacy, no personal, nothing personal about this. Is just like, she's just giving it all, and you see it. And I was blown away by her. I mean, she absolutely captivated me in those sequences, but then she has moments where she has some of her sanity back. She's excellent. She's absolutely wonderful. There's a sequence between her and Aaron Taylor Johnson. I thought she was on fire. She was absolutely on fire, and she was one of the biggest highlights I can walk away from Nosferatu with.
And Robert Eggers always has such a strong cast with all his films here. And Willem Dafoe, no secret. I mean, that guy is just a national treasure, to be honest. So his performance does not disappoint. He kind of has that unhinged quality about him, which I absolutely love.
Always.
Anytime he's in a scene, I mean, you can't take your eyes off him. Nicholas Hoult, for me, I wasn't necessarily knowing what to expect. I enjoy him in a lot of other films, but I didn't know really what to expect going into something that we're going to take with such a serious tone here. And I got to say, he was a character I resonated heavily with. I thought, going on his journey and being with him, I thought absolutely perfect casting there. And Lily Rose Depp, like you said, I can't think of anything. Something may be escaping me. I can't say that I'm very familiar with her work, so I didn't really know what to expect going into this. She was kind of the bigger question mark for me. And considering the story of Nosferatu, a lot of the story lies on her shoulders in order to be able to keep up her end of the bargain. And I'll say she surpassed my expectations for this, because with her character, what she does go through, it takes a very heavy range to really sell the story and sell the tone that we're going for. And she absolutely does. And, you look at some possession films and kind of the body work that goes into that, she is up there with some of the best. There's some body work in here. She is delivering some dialogue with Nicholas Hoult in a room, and she kind of starts doing some body work, and boy, was I captivated for that. And there are a handful of scenes where she does that, and like you said, where she kind of gets her sanity back, and she's kind of weaving in and out of these different variations of herself, and back and forth. It gets exhausting from just an audience's perspective of knowing what she's going through, but it's so gratifying to be able to see an actress like that really take the story, embody what's going on, and then present it on screen. Because, when you put her up against Nosferatu himself, boy, they play off each other so well.
Oh, yeah. And, I've been saying this for a little while now on some of our streams and everything, but 2024, it belongs to the ladies. I mean, they have just had so many wonderful leading and supporting female actresses this year in horror. They have absolutely just captivated this year and put it into a bottle. Everything from The Substance to Smile 2 and so many others, Alien. I think that for me, it's just like, this is just another, jewel in the crown that is 2024 when it comes to female performances. I mean, she just absolutely brought it. And it's something where it's like, you brought up, The Possession. I don't know if you're meaning the film in general, but it's like, I know that's getting remade from Parker Finn. And I think Parker Finn needs to take a look at her. I think he needs to see her performance, because, God, I mean, it's something. And yeah, I was really blown away by that. And I know the big thing everybody's really excited for is Bill Skarsgård as Count Orlok. And, I think maybe we should stay off of him for a good bit, just because, it's a little bit of a weaving thing. I think we'll keep it kind of light, just because it's one of those things where they're not showing him in the marketing. They're not doing anything. And I think that's definitely part of the magic of it. I think that's something that people are anticipating. So all I'll say about him personally is that I think one of the best compliments you can give to a performance like this is that every frame that you see him in, every frame that he's in this movie, I scratched my head saying, is that Bill Skarsgård? Even if you watch him under the Pennywise makeup, I can still tell just a hint that's Bill Skarsgård. I couldn't tell. I don't know if this is actually Bill Skarsgård or they just put him on the IMDb page. I mean, he is that transformed, guys. It's absolutely it's insanity. And the last thing I'll say about him is just that there's a sequence in the first act, even though I was dogging on it a little bit, between him and Nicholas Hoult when they first meet. There's a choice made by Robert Eggers in the way that they frame it, and it's brilliant. I was so on edge. Every sequence, every turn, everything they did, I thought they could do the whole movie like this. And I was just waiting for it because it was so good. And again, I didn't really praise him much, but yeah, Nicholas Holt's performance in that absolutely makes that scene for me. The fear in his face, it's so well done.
And seeing Bill Skarsgård play off so many different characters in here and the relationships that come along with them. I'll say Bill Skarsgård absolutely loses himself in this role. You know, us doing movie reviews and kind of keeping up with the movie news and everything like that, it threw me for a loop. I'm right there with you where I was watching this film and I'm like, that's Bill Skarsgård, right? And I was like, wait, do I have it wrong? That's not Bill Skarsgård. But, you know, it's like looking at it, he just loses himself in there. Looking at 2024, I'll say I can't think off the top of my head right now such an imposing villain other than Nosferatu right now. This was just something where it was, you know, to equate this for something from Marvel, like a Thanos, where it was, how are they going to get out of this situation?
A lot of power
here, you
on
know,
screen, yeah.
And every scene that is framed with Nosferatu in it against any sort of character when he kind of comes into his own, I guess you'd say, because they do play with some camera work, which I absolutely love there. It really sells it. It really makes you feel scared. And for a film that, you know, it doesn't play into your typical formula for a lot of, you know, fun vampire flicks where it's like kill after kill after kill, jump scare after jump scare after jump scare, where we're really building this tension. You need that imposing villain. I'll say Bill Skarsgård as Nosferatu absolutely has it. When we're building that tension, I absolutely felt it in a lot of these scenes. It's something where if you didn't have someone as Bill Skarsgård's caliber playing Nosferatu, I don't know if it would have ever got to that last gear that it needed to get to actually make you feel terrified. So this film is chock full of tension. It has a lot of great performances across the board. It's just a really big win, I think.
Absolutely. And, you know, I've sat with this for a little bit. And, you know, I gave you a rating as I walked out of the theater. And I'm not going to change it. I'm going to stay with it. And that's only because I think that, you know, if this is to get any higher for me, it has to be once I own it and once I can watch it at my leisure and kind of get with it. Because I think it is something that there's so much to take in. And there is that one element that I said, plus a little bit of the pacing stuff, that it does kind of leave me a little bit, you know, just a slight chip off the block for me, to where I have to say I give Nosferatu a very strong recommendation. I think that you need to go see this. It just misses a must-see for me. But again, you know, times change. People change as they watch films. As I watch this, maybe in 5 years, I'll say, hey, I would give this a must-see any day of the week. I don't know what the hell I was thinking in 2024. You know, that's the beauty of it. Or it could go down. You know, there's all kinds of things. But I feel confident and safe right now by saying that this is a strong recommend. Like I said, a couple of pacing issues, one character choice that's a little for me, but it definitely grew on me the further we got into the movie. And I think that this is something you cannot miss in December. And again, this is going to be a film I probably put on every Christmas. Like, it's not a Christmas movie by any stretch of the, I mean, kind of, but you know, it's not a Christmas movie by any stretch of the imagination. But damn, seeing this and then driving through a snowstorm, like, you're feeling it. You're feeling the energy. It's cold. It's dark. It's vampires. Ugh.
I like it. It's a gothic time. You know, for me, I'm right there with you. This is a very strong recommend. You know, it never fully got there for a must-see, but like I said, I don't think Lighthouse was a must-see for me initially coming out of the theater, but upon rewatch after rewatch of that film, it's an absolute must-see. So, looking at Nosferatu right now, there's a reason these are called raw reactions. It's right out of the theater. It's, you know, it's our initial thoughts. So upon rewatches, I could easily see this one becoming a must-see for me. Right now, it just did not get there. I'll be honest, I'm a big fan of Balls to the Wall vampire flicks. I love Abigail. I
Lost
love the
Boys,
tone of
all
that film.
stuff.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, for me, I think while the pacing's great, while the story's different than what we're used to seeing, I certainly did feel that. And like you said, there's some pacing issues that I think, watching this at home, I could have even more fun time for. But, great performances, really great shots, great sound design, great framing, great villain. I think overall, this is something you have to go to the theater to see. For me, very strong recommend.
100%. And for me, I will say, I love my Lost Boys, Abigail's, Fright Nights, things like that. They're all good, but I'm also a big fan of like gothic horror, especially when you have a director like Robert Eggers in the chair, or like a Francis Ford Coppola, at least back in the 90s. But it's like if you have a very competent director, like I'd love to see a Chris Nolan tackle like a gothic horror kind of thing. It's one of those things where it's like if you have somebody with that kind of scope, that kind of vision, I'd be very curious to see what they do. And it absolutely delivers on every front for me. Like Del Toro's doing Frankenstein. We have that to look forward to next year. And, I'm going to be right there with it. Gothic horror, old school Frankenstein. We're getting a modern day Wolfman, which is fine. But, I'm all here. I'm all in on that. I think that the more gothic horror we get to kind of balance us out from our zany fun of these creatures, the better, in my opinion. So I'm all for it. But yeah, guys, that is going to wrap us up here for Nosferatu. But don't worry, as the film gets closer to its release date, probably the weekend after it comes out, I am already putting together a panel with a couple of familiar faces to discuss Nosferatu spoilers. And just knowing that we went almost a half hour on this, we've been doing really well of keeping our run times down, but a half hour on this, I'm sure you're looking at a long one with that, especially with a couple of the guests that I've already got lined up for it. So there will be a lot more to discuss on Nosferatu, but let us know down below if you're planning on checking this thing out. And obviously, let us know if you're anticipating this. Did we win you over? Are you a little worried now? Like, I hope we didn't stray you off the film or anything. But it's an exciting time. It's a good time to be an old school monster lover. We got werewolves in the theater, and we got Nosferatu about to be. So it's a good December, man. Good way to cap off the year. But other than that, guys, if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. We appreciate you stopping by. And that's going to wrap it up here. So until next time, I'm Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
And remember, stay scared.
Do the hard shit, gonna do it live. Cause Splattercast kick it every day they live.